North Korea's leader Kim Jong Un is threatening the US with more offensive action a day after testing the country's most powerful ballistic missile. State media released these pictures, which show the missile can potentially reach anywhere in North America. State media also cited the North Korean leader claiming the test was carried out to send a clear warning to the US. Washington said a nuclear attack by Pyongyang would mean the end of the Kim regime. South Korea's president has warned Pyongyang against further provocations as Seoul builds closer security ties with the United States. Washington has vowed to back South Korea with its full range of capabilities, including nuclear.
The North Korean regime will come to realize such provocations will only bring greater pain to itself. With the recent meeting of the South Korea-US Nuclear Consultative Group held in Washington, the establishment of a comprehensive extended deterrence regime between the US and South Korea is imminent. It signifies the substantive realization of a robust nuclear-based alliance.
Joining us from Seoul is Siyoung Kim, a journalist with Arirang News and SEA Today. How are the missile tests impacting Seoul's stance on North Korea?
Of course, Ben. This was the first ICBM launch in about 5 months since July's launch and the fifth ICBM launch of 2023. So there's already been a high level of tension following North Korea's claim of successful military satellite launch last month as well, on the 21st of November. And Seoul is indeed taking a very stern stance. South Korean President Yeeun Shin called for strong action against North Korean provocations, ordering an immediate, overwhelming response following 2 missile launches in the past 2 days. On Monday's National Security Council emergency meeting, Yoon demanded that South Korea pushes for a proactive joint response with the US and Japan by utilizing the real-time information sharing system for North Korean missiles. Now, South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff on Monday also strongly condemned North Korea's ICBM launch and again urged the regime to stop its reckless provocative actions immediately.
What's brought on this record number of North Korean weapons tests this year?
Yeah, this year has been a very active one for South Korea's diplomatic relations as well, which leads to the North Korean weapons testing frequency. And frankly speaking, quite a decisive position for South Korea as well, as President Yoon closely aligned Korea with the Western allies, mainly the US, compared to the previous Moon government. The past 2 days' missile provocations can be seen as North Korea's protest against the second nuclear consultative group meeting held in Washington just a few days ago on the 15th. As well as earlier this year in April, Yoon visited Biden on an official state visit where the Washington Declaration was signed, reaffirming the United States' commitment for the defense of South Korea, followed by the US, Japan, and Korea agreeing on a trilateral real-time information sharing system at Camp David summit in August, with aims of boosting trilateral security cooperation against North Korean threats. So all in all, it has been a threatening year for North Korea itself. And the fact that,
What about
the fact that Russia is struggling with its war with Ukraine as well, yeah?
What about US safety? I just want to ask you, this missile that North Korea tested on Monday could hit anywhere in the US. How high is the danger of one being launched?
Yeah, of course, as you mentioned, ICBMs, if they are capable, if North Korea has the missiles that they're claiming to have, the technology, then they could possibly reach the US. But hitting the US would definitely be more of a brave move, but a very highly unlikely one. Not only would it bring catastrophic consequences, followed by devastating retaliation from the US and its allies, the North Korean allies, China and Russia, will never give the go-ahead in the current geopolitical climate. It doesn't matter whether it can actually reach US territories, but North Korea doesn't actually seem to be able to have the responsibility in geopolitical sense with the authority with China, economic sanctions, as well as economic cooperations with these two countries. The US military in South Korea has already deployed the THAAD, Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, in 2017, which can also detect how where the ICBM can reach the US. So all in all, I don't think it's going to be a possibility for the Pyongyang to actually attack
We'll have to leave it there.
US.
Journalist Siyoung Kim in Seoul, thank you. Let's bring in Yeeun Shin. She's a journalist at Arirang News and joins us from Seoul. What's brought on this record number of North Korean weapons tests this year?
Well, Ben, North Korea hasn't been happy with what South Korea has been doing with its key allies. Let's take a look at the timeline real quickly. Just after South Korea and the U.S. engaged in their second session of the Nuclear Consultative Group in Washington on Friday, North Korea fired a short-range missile, which was followed by an intercontinental ballistic missile. And this shows that Pyongyang wasn't happy with what had been discussed during this bilateral meeting between Seoul and Washington. There, South Korea and the U.S. discussed ways to strengthen deterrence and respond to any type of North Korean attack with conventional and even nuclear weapons. And North Korea has since threatened to preemptively, quote, counteract against its so-called enemies' provocations. And the regime's leader, Kim Jong Un, said the latest launch showed what option Pyongyang would take when Washington makes a, quote, wrong decision. And Kim added that the launches were a practical demonstration of the progress and reliability of the capabilities the DPRK has when it comes to armed forces and nuclear deterrence.
We heard the South Korean president's warning to Pyongyang. How else has Seoul responded?
Right. Given that this is the fifth ICBM launched by North Korea this year, Seoul has decided to pursue a stronger deterrence strategy, meaning that they namely activated a warning information sharing system for North Korean missiles with its key allies like the U.S. and Japan. The defense ministry on Tuesday pledged to establish the system to detect and evaluate missiles launched in real time 24/7. And it's the first time to do so, given that information used to be shared temporarily and partially during only general training. Now, Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo have also approved a multi-year exercise plan, which means from 2024, we'll see Seoul regularize military drills with its allies. And now all of these measures were brought up at the Camp David summit in August and at a trilateral summit held in November last year. But we're now seeing the three countries really bolster cooperation now that North Korea launched the highest number of ICBMs for a single year.
You also mentioned this sending signals. How much of it is a threat, though, to the US?
I mean, we'll have to see, but most of the experts I spoke to here in Korea today referred to how this seemed to be more of a showcase rather than an actual direct threat to North America. Experts commonly pointed to how the reclusive regime is trying to say its missiles are able to target the U.S.'s strategic assets in Busan, for instance, where the U.S. attacked submarine USS Missouri docked at a day prior to when North Korea shot a short-range missile on Sunday. As for the solid-fuel ICBM fired Monday morning, it's worth noting how North Korea's state media used the word fire instead of test fired, which hints that North Korea is trying to flaunt how its ICBM technology has developed. So the regime seemingly wants to indicate that it doesn't need to test such missiles. Instead, it's ready to fire and produce more. Meanwhile, South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said that the ICBM did reach an altitude of at least 6,000 kilometers, and this surpassed the maximum altitude of 3,000 reached by the ICBM tested back in April. So there does seem to be development, but experts are raising the possibility that Pyongyang might have reduced the weight of the warheads carried by the ICBM simply for the sake of demonstrating to the U.S. that its nuclear technology has the upper hand in the Korean Peninsula.
Some very interesting analysis there from journalist Yeeun Shin in Seoul. Thank you.
Thank you so much.